Friday. It's the BWI Daily Edition. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. We've got the same plate of goodness for you today. We've got Ryan Snyder talking about the whiteout game and the list that is super long already for that. And, of course, his best bets. Get you another, and by the way, I mean another Michigan preview. We have covered this game from top to bottom all week long, and we're going to round it out with one more look at Penn State, Michigan before the biggest game of the 2022 season so far. That's coming up on the BWI Daily Edition. Ryan Snyder with us for another Friday. Ryan, how you doing today? What's the plan for tonight?
Local tonight, going to Lancaster. I haven't seen Joey Schlaffer yet this year, and he happens to be playing David Poly, the up-and-coming 2024 defensive lineman from Hempfield. He just got an offer from Penn State, a few months ago. Haven't seen David play yet. I think David picked up an offer from Pitt the other day, so he's up to, like 4 offers now. I think Louisville and Temple are the other 2. And certainly a player that, as long as he continues to progress and, relationship goes well, that makes a lot of sense to end up at Penn State. So, another opportunity to see, one player already committed, of course, and then another player who I think realistically could end up here. And I can be back at my house by 10 o'clock to drink some beers and watch some college football. Although tonight's terrible Friday slate, as amazing as the Saturday slate is, we have the worst slate of Friday games I think we've seen all year. So maybe I'll just go to bed and get ready for what is going to be maybe the best. Definitely the best Saturday of college football we've had this season. And one of the best we've seen maybe in the last couple of years.
I know probably a lot of people have dubbed it this already, but I was seeing JD Pickell, who does the national show for On3, friend of the show, by the way. Separation Saturday is what he was calling it. So I think that's a fair name for everybody that we're looking at those big games this weekend from some undefeated teams to give us some clarity who's going to be the picture later on in the season.
I saw a stat today. So there's 5 ranked versus ranked teams, all of whom are undefeated. The last time that happened was 1993. So that's a pretty cool stat I thought I saw. Yep. So 10 teams undefeated, all ranked, going at it this weekend. And haven't seen that in almost 2 decades. So
here's a question.
Cool stat.
That is, and that makes me think, is there more parity in college football than there is separation? And I know that we have this debate all the time about the college football playoff and the top 3 or 4 teams, but everybody else outside of the top 3 or 4 teams, that speaks to it right there, that we haven't been this deep in the season with undefeated teams, that many of them at one time. It's just interesting to think about that way.
It just depends on how you want to look at it. There's plenty of parity between 10 and 45, but the problem is it's all anyone cares about is the 1 through 5, really the playoff era 1 through 4, and they're the teams that, keep winning. So that's why we need to expand the playoff, of course. And, I think that's coming. I think I saw something yesterday where it could come in 2024 is the latest talk with that. So we'll see if that gets done. But the ACC commissioner came out this week and was like, we're finally unified. And what was funny about it is the ACC was the one effing it up the whole time, or one of the ones effing it up the whole time. And I was just like, you jerk. So anyway, so we'll see where that comes. But there's plenty of parity. I think it's just, those are all the teams that end up playing in the Quick Lane Bowl. So, most people don't care about it. It is what it is. So
it's interesting because I'm one of 2 thoughts about this. When the NFL expanded the playoffs, right? And they made it 1 extra team and you only got 1 team into the bye. And I think the Bills hadn't been in the playoffs at that point. And I was like, now it feels like there's in my mind, it feels like there's an asterisk about, getting into the playoffs because it was easier. More teams make the playoffs. And there's a bit of that of you weren't one of the 4, but then ultimately it does not matter because once you're there, it's the exact same thing. But it's interesting how that works. Of you had 2 teams, then you have 4, and now we might have 12. Is it 12 or 16?
It'll be 12 for the playoffs for college football. The one thing I was going to say is the team that I root for more than any team in the world. Your Bills are the Philadelphia Phillies to me.
Yeah.
and they just got into the playoffs because it was expanded this year. Obviously they're making their run through the playoffs right now, which, knock on wood, they can beat the Braves here. But I don't give a damn how many teams there are in the playoffs as long as my team's in it and I got something to watch and drink a couple beers and watch a game and have fun. Either watch it with my wife or my friends or whomever. That's all I care about. So keep expanding.
Yeah, I found myself in the exact same spot after about 5 minutes. It did not take me long to come off of that spot. There's a lot of stuff going on. Not this weekend, but the whiteout game is not just a big game for fans and for TV. It is a huge game for recruiting because it's a huge game for TV and for fans. So the list has been already bubbling up. What do you want to start with the list? Because it is, I think you said before the show, 60 plus names deep. We're not going to get into all of those. Check out bluewhiteillustrated.com for just $1. We finally put an end date on that, so it is coming. Please sign up. Make sure you get it in. $1 to get all the names, but pick out the ones you want to talk about, and we'll go through the list that you have.
Yeah. So Sean and I worked all week on this really. And we're still a week out. So a lot's going to change. I mean, there's going to be guys that are saying they're coming right now that are going to tell us next Wednesday they're not coming. We just have that every year. But Sean and I put that list out today. It ended at 68 players confirmed, 60 of whom hold a Penn State scholarship offer. And that does include the committed players. I think right now we've got about a dozen or so of the committed guys set to be here. So, I mean, we're still talking about 40 plus or 50, really almost 50 scholarship guys expected to be here, which is awesome. And if the list ends up being that way in the end, actually, I think it's going to grow, to be honest with you. I think it's going to continue to grow and really could end up being at maybe as many as like 70 or so. I was looking at last year's whiteout list early in the week to kind of get a reference of just kind of what I should expect or compare to. And I at the time last year, there was I think it was 50 or 60 scholarship guys, but it ended up being over 90 guys who will play Division I football somewhere. So,
wow.
Guys at the time didn't hold a scholarship offer, but now they're 2023 and maybe they won't play Penn State, but they'll play at a Rutgers or wherever. So, I mean, I really could be looking at a list where, of course, we're going to point to those scholarship guys, the 40 or so key guys that, we've been talking about for the longest time. But really, it could be a list where when you look at the 2025, the 2026 guys, where you see nearly 100 players who are going to play Division I football at one level or another, whether it's, Group of 5, FBS, whatever it may be. So I think that's really what we're potentially looking at. And one thing Penn State's trying to do too, compared to years past, I mean, there were times in recent years where they would try and host 170 guys and they would let all their friends bring their friends. And, of course, do whatever you can to appease these guys. But really, they've learned from that and are really trying to make it committed guys can bring a friend, like Birchmile will bring a friend, Jamin Williams will bring a couple teammates, stuff like that. But they're really trying to make it where, if you're a prime prospect, you can't just be bringing everybody. It's for the
too many bro hugs, just too many bro hugs. You can't get through that.
It's just too many people. It's just too many. I mean, the Beaver Stadium sideline is not big. If you went to Auburn, for example, and you see how wide those sidelines are between the hedges and how much room there is there. I mean, Penn State has a third of that. So it's just, you can only fit so many guys on the sidelines. You can only fit so many people in the seats. You gotta get everybody's parents in there as well. So you're still talking about, when you include parents and everything, you're still talking about 400 plus people really in the end. Yeah. So, so I'll start with a few names that kind of stood out. I mean, one thing I wrote earlier this week was the linebacker list. I think there's a really good list of linebackers who are planning to be there. First one that grabs my attention is Anthony Speca, Central Catholic prospect. We've talked about him a good bit. He's a 4-star in the On3 consensus. One thing with Speca too is he's actually going to Michigan this weekend, and Penn State and Michigan are, in my opinion, his top 2 schools. I think Notre Dame's in there. I think Tennessee's coming on strong too, especially with their strong performance this year. But for the longest time, I've thought this is a Penn State Michigan battle. So certainly interesting to see him expected to come back to Penn State 1 week after Michigan. He's going to get the maize out at Michigan, the white out at Penn State. It would give him a lot to compare to. But a couple other guys, Cam Lindsey out of Aliquippa, of course, been on campus quite a few times. I think he's a player who could realistically end up here. Aaron Chiles had a good counsel. Sean and I talked about him the other week on the Tuesday podcast. I think whether he grows into a D end or not, we'll see. 220 right now, 6'3" ish, could certainly pack on some pounds and end up rushing.
It's a thick looking 220 too.
He is.
He looks great.
Yeah, he's a great looking prospect, a great kid too. He's Penn State. Just talking to sources one time after his visit in the spring, man, they raved about just who he is as a person and just what he could potentially be. I mean, he's got it all. He's got the whole package, man. Just a complete player. Everything off the field too. But Sam Piloff, Chris Jones, Piloff from Wisconsin, of course, 3-star guy, and then Chris Jones, a 4-star guy out of Virginia. We added one other player since I wrote that earlier this week too. One other offense or linebacker prospect to keep an eye on is Caden Jones as well. Still trying to get a better feel for Caden and his interest in Penn State, but keep an eye on him. Two other position groups that have grabbed my attention when I look at this list are running back and offensive line. Running back, we've confirmed DeJuan Williams from St. Francis, Sam Williams-Dixon out of Ohio. John Forster is a good 2025 prospect as well out of New Jersey. I think that's a good-looking list. Daniel Coles, too. Daniel was up for a game earlier this year. I believe he's out of Virginia. I believe it is Brook Point. I believe the school is. Another guy to keep an eye on there. So, 4 quality running back prospects. And then the offensive line, you have the 3 guys from St. Edwards. You have the Devontae and Deontay Armstrong, the 2 twins, and then of course their teammate Ben Roebuck as well. They're all expected, and then you have a handful of others too. You have Kevin Haywood from Archbishop Wood. You have Jake Warnara out of Florida, and then you have Luke Hamilton, who's also from Ohio, and then Zafir Stewart too, the 2024 offensive tackle from Ematep, who got an offer from Penn State. I think it was just last month. So just some good looking position groups there to kind of start off. T-Frank, I mean, you've looked down the list. Anybody kind of grabs your attention or any questions you want to add, or should I just keep rolling off names?
Yeah, keep going. Cause this is such a big list. I've not been involved in the nuances of this before. The guys that did stand out to me were the offensive linemen, having seen some of them in person at some of the camps this summer, the Armstrong twins, and just the group you could make out of those pieces, I think, is super intriguing. And I know that you're not going to get every one of those players, and probably you don't want all of them at the end, but just another great opportunity for Penn State's offensive line recruiting prospects when they've got some good regional players and some players that seem to have an interest. Just getting them over the line is kind of an important thing, but that's really the group that I thought that kind of piqued my interest with the overall list.
Okay. A couple other guys too. I'm not going to name all the standout guys, but there are a couple who grabbed my attention. I just wrote today, Ryan Wingo, St. Louis University High School. It's always an interesting name. St. Louis University High School. Always just interesting to me. 6'2", 198. We have him right now at on 3 as the 14th best player in the entire country. And really the whole industry has him ranked incredibly high. The consensus has him at number 12. But he's a top player in Missouri, a top 3-4 wide receiver in the country, and someone who is absolutely on pace to be a 5-star player. So let's see if Ryan makes it out here. I've talked to Ryan and his recruiting coordinator at the school this week. Both said, all intentions are to make it there. And if you look at Ryan Wingo's visit list too, he's been all over the place. So my point with that is just that he can realistically get out here. Like there's a ton of guys who are going to tell us they get here, but they don't have flights scheduled. It is what it is. We see that every year. But Wingo's been to Notre Dame 4 times, Arkansas 4 times, Missouri and A&M twice. And then you look down the list, you got Tennessee, Michigan, LSU, Ohio State, Oklahoma. I mean, my point is he's really gotten around. So I feel like Wingo really should probably end up at this game. I mean, all intentions are that he's going to be here. So that would be massive. One thing we talked about last week when we were going over the coaching visits for the bye week is Taylor Stubblefield went to see Ryan Wingo last week out at his school. So that's, certainly a good relationship there. And, the fact that Stubblefield was just out there should give Penn State a boost. The 2 other guys that grabbed my attention, Brian Robinson, wrote about him this week as well, 2024 defensive end from Ohio. Brian Robinson is genuinely one of the most impressive individuals I've met in this 2024 class. I remember I knew who he was, but I didn't know him in person. So when we were at the June second long line strong 7-on-7. I just remember, I think I told this before too. I remember watching him lead just a bunch of guys who were defensive ends. It was an individual position drill they were doing at the time. And, you would have thought that these are all his normal teammates, just the way he was leading guys, motivating guys, like just incredible individual. I mean, this guy is, 16, 17, going on 35. Like he's just, his maturity is just incredible. And then of course his offer sheet and all that stuff's incredible too. It's wild to me that Ohio State has not offered him. So there's clearly something there that I need to learn more about, but we have him as a top, let's see, I'm trying to figure, what is it? 170, in the nation for On3. So a top guy, one of the top 10 players in Ohio. The consensus has him even higher at number 130 and number 3 in Ohio. And, he's got the Michigan, Notre Dame, Kentucky, handful of other awesome schools. So certainly a guy that Penn State would love to get back. This will be his third visit as well to Penn State. So a lot going on there.
He's got a deny Dennis Sutton vibe about him. His play style, size. I think that's a good comparison. And I don't know if that speaks to anything about the interest or not interest from Ohio State, but that was my first, I watched him for the first time here a couple days ago. And that was the first thing I thought is, there's another 6'5", 240-pound defensive end. And similar abilities, I think, as well. But I interrupted you. Who else were you going on to round?
No, Denai's a really good comparison. Denai's a little bigger. I think Robinson was 230 in the summer too, so he's probably a little bit bigger now. That we got that measurement from him. One of the camps he attended this year, but yeah, Denai, we're talking 10, 15 pounds there, so not a big difference there. But who was I mentioning? Oh, Brady Prescorn, the tight end out of Rochester, Michigan. I still have him as Penn State's number 1 tight end prospect in this class. There are a couple others that, since the season has started, Ty Howell's really kind of taken more and more of a look at. But Brady is still, without a doubt, in my opinion, the staff's top guy. To add to that, too, actually, Penn State is planning to see Brady tonight, I believe. I know Taylor Stubblefield is out in the Detroit area. He's checking up on a bunch of schools today. And then James Franklin will join him tonight at Brady Prescorn's game. They're actually playing Harper Woods, who is home to 2024 defensive back Jacob Oden. Jacob's another 4-star guy. Penn State took a little longer to offer Jacob, but they have since offered him. He came to campus this summer. And by the way, Jacob Oden is on this list for the whiteout next week too. It seems like everybody's on it. But Brady, like I said, anybody who's been watching these podcasts or reading the stuff we write, Brady Prescorn is without a doubt one of the top guys in the entire country, and easily one of the top tight ends in the entire country. And I have him as pretty much easily Penn State's top guy overall as far as tight ends concerned.
It's amazing how many people the whiteout draws to Happy Valley because even people that maybe aren't going to the game. My in-laws are visiting on the day of the whiteout. Like, it's the first day they'll be here is the whiteout game. And this is the second time that they've accidentally scheduled a trip coming on for one of the biggest games of the Penn State football calendar. So even people that aren't going to the game end up in Happy Valley during that Saturday. So anything, I know this is always the dumb question, but do you expect anything coming out of that game in terms of anything?
The guys we have predictions in, of course, Kevin Haywood out of Archbishop Wood, Dominic Nichols out of Oakdale in Maryland. I can see those guys committing at some point, but the whiteout game doesn't really set up for commitments, especially with it being a night game. Because, sometimes maybe you could get a commitment on the field, but it's just, this isn't like the Villanova game last year, right?
Yeah.
Where he's kind of set in, I don't know if it was Matthias or I forget who committed during that game, but and it just doesn't really set up well for that, just because there's so many guys here. So even before the game, the amount of conversation and contact you can have on certain guys, it's just very limited when you have to get around to everybody, of course. And then of course, with it being a night game, some guys will stick around after the game, hang out in the locker room, chat with the staff.
Yeah,
it's going to be like midnight, when they would get the opportunity to do that. So most people hit the road. Although anyone who's been here a couple of times knows you probably should just hang out a little while the traffic thins out, because you're just going to sit in your car for a while anyways. But I would say this: there are a couple guys that I've talked about before that I didn't mention there. Quinton Martin is expected to be back. We've talked about Quinton Martin a ton, of course. He's the best player in Pennsylvania, I think, right now, regardless of class. Omilio Agar, too, another really good Pennsylvania prospect, four-star cornerback out of St. Joseph's Prep. He's should be here as well. And then Jaden Davis, who I think is Penn State's top quarterback prospect for 2024. He will be at Michigan this weekend. He won't be Michigan this weekend. He will be at Michigan for the Michigan State game in 2 weeks, I believe it is. But he will be, I think, Tennessee this weekend, Penn State next weekend, and then Michigan for the Michigan State game in 3 weeks. So just curious to see if Penn State can really make up any ground with Jaden Davis. I still think Penn State's probably fringe top 5 with him at the most right now.
Well, it'll be something that we keep monitoring going forward. It's always fascinating, the machinations of recruiting, which is why we talk about it twice a week on the BWI Daily Edition. Also, you got just a huge information dump from Ryan about all the interesting players, all the important players. If you would help us out and like the video, that always helps us out. When you like the video, you should see how much of an impact it has on the number of people it reaches and the number of people that subscribe when we have a video that people hit the like button on. So if you're watching the video, you're 20 minutes in, you're hooked. You're going to be here for Best Bets and our conversation about the Penn State football game coming up on Saturday. So just hit the like button and we'll move on. And speaking of moving on, you know what time it is.
I think this is going to be one of the best seasons Toledo's ever had. We'll do the official play will be -7.5 first half. Degenerate in me sometimes watches a little Hawaii, Stanford. I'll lay 12 with Stanford. Vanderbilt stinks. I had them last week against Notre Dame. That was a winner.
Ryan Snyder's Best Bets is here. This is what, our fourth week of the season?
Fourth week of the season so far, yeah. We didn't do the first couple of weeks. I was busy traveling around. But week 4 for us. I also don't, if you ask me, I probably don't like betting those first couple of weeks of college football. They're totally new teams. It feels like every year, right? So you got to figure out who's legit and who's not. But week 4 for us. So I'll roll through a couple stats here quick before we get into the teams. 4-2 last week. Back a nice winning week. We're back to 10-10 on the season. And what is my all-time record? I think I'm 51-38 all-time record. So we're in the green still all-time and back to even for the season so far. 51-28. How dare you take away my stats there, T. Frank?
I just updated the ticker. Everyone who's watching saw me typing awkwardly, and it didn't save the changes. So that was an old banner.
It's all good. We do 51-38. Yeah. So I wish it was 51-28. That'd be a lot better. But we're I don't know what, plus 13. So we'll take that.
Let's take a look at this week's best bets. Iowa State at Texas, Oklahoma State at TCU, Stanford at Notre Dame, and of course the game of the week, Penn State at Michigan. Iowa State at Texas. What are we looking at here?
Yeah, only 4 plays this week. I'll be honest, man. This is a couple things with this week. Like, this is a hard week, I feel like. So I'm not as confident in some of these plays as I have been. I'm not trying to scare people away or prepare myself for 1 and 3. But I just found this to be a really hard week to pick games. And with so many, the one thing is, like, James Franklin was a little bit ahead of everybody when it comes to not releasing injury information. There's just so many injuries out there right now that there's just no information on. Like, for example, I would love to bet Alabama tomorrow, but I just don't know what's up with the Heisman Trophy winner. But I do think the spot sets up incredibly well for Alabama with everybody being on Tennessee. Without knowing what's up with Bryce Young, it's hard to play. All right. Iowa State, though. So a couple things here. I just think this is a total sandwich spot for Texas. Massive win against Oklahoma last weekend. Great performance. Everything was great. And now they have Oklahoma State next weekend. So this is kind of one of those sandwich games. Oklahoma State's a top 10 team right now, or top 15 team, I believe. So this is just one of those sandwich spot games. Iowa State's 0-3 in the conference, right? So you kind of overlook them a little bit. They've taken a step back compared to recent years. But a couple things with this one. One is, when I was doing the research on this one, Matt Campbell has only lost by 17 points one time in his entire Iowa State career. One time they've lost by 17 points. A couple other cool stats I found here. They are 30-17 all time against the spread as an underdog, and Iowa State is 14-1 against the spread when they're getting 8 points or more against a conference opponent. I mean, 14-1, man, that's an incredible stat there. I mean, you would think it's a lock. Now,
right.
Now, at the same time, a lot of those were put together when they had Breece Hall in the backfield and, you know, everybody else. I'm trying to think who was the quarterback the last couple of years for them. I mean, they've certainly taken a step back from what they had the last couple of years. But, you know, I just think Iowa State comes to play. And this is really just a statistic play. I mean, there's just too many stats here pointing to Iowa State for me in this one to not consider it. I do also kind of like the over in this game. I don't have it. I think the over under I think it started at 55 and it's down to 48 now. You know, the fact that everybody's betting the under there. I mean, the fact that it dropped 7 points shows you everybody's betting the under. But I just think, you know, if Iowa State can get 14 to 17 points in this one, it should probably go over and end up somewhere. I mean, I think we could see a 31-17, you know, 31-21 kind of game here. So I don't mind the over in this one, but I'll roll with Iowa State and all those stats that are pointing towards Matt Campbell in this one.
So you go from Iowa State at Texas, overlooking the Cyclones because they've got Oklahoma State next week. So you got Oklahoma State at TCU for our next game.
Right.
Lots of Big 12 flavor here. What are you looking at in this one?
Yeah, I just think Oklahoma State sucks. There's another sound bit for you down the road. I don't think they suck, but I mean, they're just really overrated. I feel they haven't really played much. And, you know, finally they're going to play the best team that they'll maybe face this whole year. Cause I think TCU is for real. You know, one thing I really noticed last week with Oklahoma State is their defense played 104 plays last week against Texas Tech. I mean, Texas Tech, and they had a couple injuries on that defense too. I think TCU has the best wide receivers, certainly in the Big 12. I think they have one of the best wide receiver corps in the country. And, you know, minus only 4, I really think that the spread is, you know, should be closer to a touchdown. I think Spencer Sanders is an okay quarterback. I don't think he's really anything special. I really like what TCU's doing here. And, you know, they were challenged last week against Kansas. And I think that's kind of why this is only 4. I mean, I feel like I said, that if they beat Kansas by, you know, another 7 points or so last week, I think you see this spread closer to a touchdown. So I like TCU at home. I love their receiver corps. I think Oklahoma State's defense is really what's going to let them down here. You're going to have a lot of points in this one. You're going to have a lot of ups and downs and momentum flows, but I love TCU in this spot. Give me TCU -7.
All right, so that's our second play of the week. Now we have quite a spread here on this one, and I'll throw it up here. Stanford plus 16.5 at Notre Dame. Are you trusting Stanford here? Because that's a big spread, and Notre Dame has not been great. So what do you think?
Absolutely not. I think Notre Dame's starting to put it together, and I think Stanford's terrible. I really do. They're probably the worst team in Power 5 right now. If you really kind of look over some of their stats, I mean, right. The big thing that really stands out to me, there's 2 stats that really stand out to me. One is Stanford is 123rd in the country right now offensively in havoc plays. So it means they're turning the ball over, they're allowing sacks. You know, there's a ton of stats there that are just terrible for Stanford as far as everything you don't want in an offense. And then their defensive line is probably the worst in the country right now. I mean, they can't get any stops behind the line of scrimmage. They can't get any stops at the line of scrimmage, and they can't get any stops even 3-4 yards, you know, behind them. I mean, their defensive line is just getting pushed around all the time. Notre Dame needs a dominating win too. I think they can really put together a great performance here. You know, they have a throwaway game against UNLV next week, and then they have Syracuse and Clemson coming up, and this is an opportunity for Notre Dame to really right the ship here. And I think if they can blow out Stanford, it just, you know, gives the fan base and everybody some, you know, some good feelings, I guess is the right way to say. You know, again, they got another UNLV next week. They'll smack, but they've got some really big games coming up. So I think we're going to see Notre Dame. I think they're going to see Notre Dame kind of put together here. I easily think they can win this game by 24 points. I think they can win this game by 30 points. To me, this spread should be closer to 21. So give me the Irish.
All right, so let's recap before we get into our game of the week and then get into our game of the week. So here we are. This is the buffet of options that you have. Run down through what we have.
Yeah, just statistical play with Iowa State. They're 14-1 all time. Since Matt Campbell took over the program, they're 14-1 when getting 8 or more points against a conference opponent. I just have to play that stat. It's too consistent for me not to play it. You don't see that very often. Oklahoma State, I just don't think their offense. I don't think their defense is very good. Not that TCU's defense is great or anything, but this spread should be closer to a touchdown. I feel. Give me TCU -4, and then Stanford. I think they're the worst team in Power 5 right now. Notre Dame needs a dominating win. They're starting to put it together. Drew Prine isn't anything great, but Drew Prine doesn't have to be great in this game. They can run the ball all over Stanford. This, again, I think is another spread that should be closer to 3 touchdowns. And one other thing, too, with this is, you'll find a lot of 17s with this Stanford spread. So make sure you find the 16.5 because you can find it if you search around your book. So find that 16.5 number just to play a little safe and give me the Irish minus that number.
It's the BWI Daily Edition. Ryan Snyder taking you through his best bets of the week, and I always I pin him down to it. He's got to pick the Penn State game as well. So this is a line that's changed throughout the week. I think this was much closer. I heard at the beginning of the week than it is now.
No, the opposite. No. Penn State came out as a +10 by DraftKings last week.
Okay, all right.
Had me shocked. I mean, I was shocked, T. Frank. I never thought I'd see Penn State +10 against Michigan. Now it's dropped to 7, which is where it should be. I honestly kind of still think it's a little too much. Honestly, I'll get ready to do it. I have Penn State this week. I have Penn State winning outright in this game. Maybe a little bit of a homer play. I don't know. If you guys want to call it that, that's fine. But when I just look at Michigan, dude, they've played nobody. Yeah. They played absolutely no one. Hawaii, Colorado State, UConn, Iowa, Indiana. So sure, their defensive metrics may be great, but those are 5 of the worst offenses in the country. I just have very little faith in them.